Good morning, and welcome Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota and Lakewood Ranch Unitarian Universalists, and to all of our visitors as well. I'm the Reverend Doug Wadkins. I'm the interim senior minister here, and I will be the lead for today's service. I'm pleased to be joined today by the Reverend Budfriend Jones, one of our associate ministers. Right now, I invite you to sit back and enjoy a prelude and some announcements this morning, and then we'll be back in just a moment. We offer a very special welcome to our visitors. We hope that while you visit our homepage, you'll take just a moment to click on a banner entitled Welcome Visitors. That will take you to a special section in the webpage that gives you a lot of helpful information about the congregation. We also hope that while you were there, you will sign up on our virtual guest book. If you do that, we will send you our weekly newsletter, The Contact, and also you'll be able to find out more about our various gatherings throughout the week on Zoom. And you will receive some of those links to be able to join us. We hope that you will give our various gatherings a try so that you can find the right ways to connect in this time. We also encourage you on the homepage to notice the donate button. In the time of pandemic, we continue to offer our services, to pay our staff, to keep the building up, and so your generosity means a lot to us. This is also a time when we have a special attention to our generosity and to the importance of how we give, because we are in the midst of our stewardship campaign. I'm really pleased this morning to be joined by our extraordinary chairs of the stewardship campaign, Bet and Bill Cummings, and they are here with us in person, and so I would like to invite them to share an update on the stewardship campaign now. Welcome, Bet and Bill.
Thank you, Doug, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning, and thank you. We're going to do three things while we're here. One is thank some people who were the driving force for the success of the campaign. We'll update you on the financials, and then we'll have a drawing for the winner. First, Laura Campbell, who did the logo. Doug Caldwell, who did the voiceover and also the videotaping. Then the committee starts with Joan Bennett, Penny Morrison, Carl Morrison, Bob Clapp, Ken Halperin, and last but not least, Dana, the president of the congregation, and the staff members, Roberta and Dee, who kept us on the true and narrow to complete this task. And now an update for the financials.
Yes, we're doing really well on our campaign. Our pledge goal this year is $474,330. To date, that is to today, the amount pledged is $356,938. That is 75% of our goal already reached, with 50% of our people pledging. That's very, very good. We thank you all so much for that, especially during this time when we haven't been able to get together. And now we've had an incentive going for people who pledge early. It's really important to encourage people to get those pledges in. So our committee decided to do a raffle for a one-year membership to Selby Gardens, a family membership to Selby Gardens. So now we're going to draw from those names of the people who pledged early. And we have
Joyce Fitzpatrick.
So congratulations to Joyce. We will deliver that membership card to you. So we'll be in touch. And thank you to everyone who's pledged. If you can, please continue to do so. Thank you. Together we can.
And thank you, Bet and Bill, for being with us this morning and your incredible work on the stewardship campaign this year. We are indeed grateful for those who have pledged early. There is still plenty of time for you to get your pledge in, and every pledge, especially this year, but every year matters deeply. So we hope that you will continue to give as you're able to. We remind you that after the service today, there is a coffee hour for a few minutes, a chance for you to check in with other members of the congregation in both the large and small group. And that link is the same link that you use for the forum in the morning. So I hope you will join us. Also, finally, a special announcement. The Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota's Arts Council is pleased to present a virtual exhibit by our Artist of the Month, member artist Kathleen Konieczek Moran. This is an exhibit of her fine art and her botanical illustrations, along with her comments that will tell you much about Kathleen and her art. Although the gallery itself is still closed, you can see Kathleen's work online. You can access her exhibit by clicking the link in our newsletter, The Contact, or you can see it on our church website by going to our church at the top of the homepage and then clicking on the link for the Arts Council. In just a moment, we will move into our chalice lighting. So I invite you during the interlude, if you've not done so, to find a candle, or if you have a chalice at home, and in a moment, join us as we spark our chalices together. As we move more deeply into this service, in a moment we will light our chalices together. We begin with these words. It starts here, in this moment, in this breath. You feel rising in your chest, this beat building between us, the healing, the hunger, the hope, the courage, the calling, the commitment, the drawing out of a new day. It begins now, in the imagination, in this story we weave together, this song we sing, this prayer we bring into being, from our hearts to our lips, from our hands to our life, our shared life. It starts here, with praise and thanksgiving, forgiveness, and this humble, centering confession that we could be wrong. This promise that we make to keep learning, to keep trying, to keep our sense of humor, to keep close this knowing that we are all in this together. Come, let us begin. Come, let us worship together. I invite you, as I read these words, to spark your chalice at home. We light this chalice in the spirit of the fourth principle. We covenant to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I invite you now to join in our opening hymn, hymn 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
Trust the wisdom We come to our worship to center our lives. We do this through the centering in words, centering in silence, centering in music. As we center in words, we will listen to words crafted by Loretta Williams. We, believers of the dream, affirm that a new vision of hope is emerging. We pledge to work for that community in which justice will be actively present. We affirm that there is struggle yet ahead. We know that in the struggle is the hope for the future. We affirm that we are co-creators of the future, not passive pawns, and we stand united in affirmation of our hope and our vision of a just and inclusive society. We affirm the unity of all persons. We affirm the community that allows us to touch upon each other's humanity. We affirm a unity that opens our eyes, ears, and hearts to see the difference, but common forms of oppression, suffering, and pain. Yet, we are one in the image of God, and we celebrate our hopes for human unity within ourselves and within our gathered community. We will discover the strength not to hide in indifference, affirming that hope and publicly expressed energizes and enables us to move forward. Together, we pledge action to transcend barriers, be they racial, political, economic, social, or religious. We pledge to make our tomorrows become our todays. And now join us for a moment of meditation and silence, followed by our singing together of Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life and shape of justice. Roots hold me close, winds set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
I invite you to participate with me in hearing this reading written by Scott Russell Sanders, taken from his book, Staying Put, Making a Home in a Restless World. Scott writes, I think we are called to the work of healing, both inner and outer. Healing of the mind through a change in consciousness, healing of the earth through a change in our lives. We can begin the work by learning how to abide in a place. I'm talking about an active commitment, not passive lingering. If you stay with a husband or wife out of laziness rather than love, that is inertia, not marriage. If you stay put through cowardice rather than conviction, you will have no strength to act. Strength comes, healing comes from aligning yourself with the grain of your place and answering its needs. Here ends our reading. May we take a moment of reflection with our interlude, Wake Now My Senses. For a few moments, I'd like to reflect on a couple of important areas that have come up in our conversations over the last weeks. In so many ways, I'm aware that our time together is flying. Before you know it, just in a few weeks, you will be collaborating with the board to put together a search committee. And then in the fall, we will move into researching what we need to know to empower your search team to find the right person for their work as your new senior minister. In this light, it is not uncommon for people to be impatient when we take some moments in worship to reflect on some of the matters that focus on the community. But in the interim time, there are really only a very few sermons that actually do that focused work. And it is especially true that there are reasons why this reflection is so crucial in this time. It is especially true in the interim time for at least two reasons. Both of them I've talked with you about before. But it is true that organizational development people are aware that there is a possibility of looking at the sense of purpose and meaning within an organization in times of major change that does not really exist at any other time. What tends to happen in an organization is that they find patterns and leadership that work. And once they begin to benefit from that good leadership or those good patterns, it is very often the case that they become dependent on those patterns and begin to let them do their work. But what happens over time is what works in one time begins slowly to move backward in its ability to do the same sort of work as effectively. And often there are examples of decline within the organization, decline of energy, of creativity. Sometimes in organizations like congregations, decline of membership or a decline in its ability to have financial health. And so often it requires something like a major change of leadership for us to step back and ask ourselves questions that don't depend upon things as they've usually been done, that allow us to think outside of the box more clearly. That's one of the reasons. But the other reason is that one of the most important ways that we know who the next leader is for us to reflect on some important questions about who the congregation is now. Not just in terms of who you are as a demographic, but who you are in terms of your sense of what you are called to do within this place and out in the world. And so I've been in conversation with you all really from the very beginning of my time here about what is important in this congregation for you now, and to think about who you want to be in the future, whom you want to serve, both within the congregation and beyond. And most of all, what actions are essential for your sense of purpose. And so I invited us into a series of conversations, and the real essence of that is for you to listen to each other. You're not really here to tell me what you want. I mean, I certainly am curious what is true for you, and it will help me work with you. But most of this will come to fruition after I've left as your interim minister, and you begin your work with your new senior minister, with your staff, and with your lay leaders. And so I will reflect just briefly about a couple of major strands that invoke important questions for the future and invite you to spend some time thinking about it. We will invite you to be in conversation next month for a little while to bring greater clarification about these important questions. But for now, I invite you to think about a couple of areas that have come out of your exploration of what you are called to do in the world. Now, I've heard a variety of things from you, and it seems like in the last weeks, as you've been talking with each other, you have been in conversation about whom you hope to serve within the congregation and beyond, and what it is that you think that the world as it is now asks of you as a faithful community. And there are both some common themes that I've heard, but there are also some places of significant difference. And it is not unusual that when we are looking at the future and envisioning it, that there will be some components, some opinions, some ways of understanding that truth that will be at odds with each other in a congregation. Many religious communities are aware of things within their congregation that are important places of dynamic tension. They're not a place of badness or of separation necessarily, but a place that calls us to continue to speak and listen to each other carefully, look for some common threads, as well as understand what those places of difference ask us as well. The strands that I've heard are consistent with your larger areas of commitment that I spoke about in the last week's sermon, in thinking about the two major ways that you think about what you are committed to. And that is the idea that we are both committed to continuing the work of strengthening ourselves, understanding ourselves better, taking care of ourselves in difficult times, letting that self-awareness help us understand our lives. And we are also committed to taking that strength and that clarity in helping us do work out in the community. A congregation must give its time and energy to encouraging its members to not only care for themselves, but to foster a deep spirit of growth throughout their lives. I think an important place of clarity is how the sense of community connection within this place is a big part of your vision, and that there are at least a couple of big questions that need further exploration. The first one has to do with your work on social justice. In many congregations, it is important for them to clarify just exactly how broad their understanding and how central their understanding of social justice is to their work. Even within congregations that understand themselves as being deeply steeped in social justice, when they actually look at the number of people within their congregation that actually engage in social justice work, it is often somewhere in the single digits of the percentage of the congregation. And it is rarely above 10% within the congregation, and that's often in smaller congregations that are very socially active. It is important in a congregation such as yours, where you have said again and again that social justice is essential to you, to continue to think about what that means in action. How important it is for you to do various kinds of social justice work. For some congregations, social justice work is inspirational and aspirational, and they know that there will always be activists within their congregation, and they hope over time that more and more people will join with that. But some congregations have embraced how important it is for social justice to be about empowering as many people as possible to do that work. For the future, what do you believe will best serve this congregation? To support the work of your activists, or to work carefully and thoughtfully to empower as much social justice work in as many people as possible? What you really understand is the true answer to that question will make a big difference in who the right leader for the future will be. The other component of the question has to do with thinking about the concept of how big of a tent a particular congregation will be. And a lot of that reminds me of the importance of the ongoing spiritual work of what we call centering. Centering is essential in any of this work of connecting with the world, but it also often is misunderstood. It is a larger principle that guides us and helps us know the world more deeply. And in widening the circle of concern, it defines centering like this. It is a leaning toward, a prioritizing of the perspective, an attention to those whose needs are considered and who are most affected. So as Richard Rohr reminds us, from those at the edge of any system and those excluded from any system, ironically and invariably, they hold the secret for the conversion and wholeness of that very group. Part of what I want you to remember as we explore these questions is not that we are really working to exclude anyone. My experience of you is that you are very welcoming. But let's use the opposite corollary, that through the work of intentionally including people, we often find the heart of what it is that we need to know about ourselves as individuals and as a community. Through that work, we often find the very heart of who we are and what we're called to do as a congregation. And so an important question for your future is how you understand the largeness of that tent. And when I say that, what I mean is that in many towns, there really is just one single Unitarian Universalist congregation that serves that entire area. And in a few towns, there are multiple congregations. But within each of them, there is the question of how large that sense of inclusion is for the congregation. Do you seek to be very intentional in finding various ways to include a larger group in the population? Or will you be more focused in the future on who you want to attract and keep in your work within the congregation? As many of you know, there is a long-standing conversation around how big the tent will be here. Whether your work will intentionally include welcoming younger people and younger families with children, or whether you will understand yourselves as primarily a congregation that serves the needs of retirees. What you would hope, I believe, is that your sense of how big the tent is reflective of what is also true in the general demographics of the place in which you live. In Sarasota, over the last few years, the median age has moved to a slightly younger percentage of approximately about 50 years old. And that within the various places in Sarasota, there will continue, most likely, to be an increase both in elderly population folks who come here to retire, but therefore also an increase in the people that work within the service industries that serve those people. So we will have a continued influx of both younger people and retirees. It offers an important challenge to think about for the future and an opportunity to be in deeper conversation about what it means for your future. I invite you to think about a few things as we allow ourselves to ponder in preparation to talk with each other. One is that you already have young people in your midst in this congregation, and so they certainly will be looking to your decision as an indication of how welcome they feel. And that shouldn't change you from making the decision that is the right one, but to just remember how important it is to be very thoughtful about the people who are already in your midst in that conversation. And make sure that you have included them in talking about what your future should look like. I invite you to remember that most of our congregations throughout the United States tend to experience the need for families to find a place that is open-minded and open-hearted to give religious education to the family and to their young people. That is certainly likely to be true in Sarasota. And with only 2 congregations, there is plenty of work to do to offer that space for that religious education. Number 3, there are certain qualities of generosity of mind and spirit in which so many of our values are expressed. They are expressed through our principles, for instance, that are based on long centuries of cumulative lived wisdom. And they bring forth ideas like human worth, justice, equity, and compassion, free and responsible searches for truth and meaning, and the interdependent web. They all tend to strongly advocate for a larger tent, whatever the reality of the congregation. And it isn't so much that this is about whether you know for certain whether you will effectively attract new people. The real essence of this work, I believe, in enlarging your perception, is that it gives you a greater sense of what is possible within the congregation. It creates a sense of largeness rather than a sense of constriction. It gives you a sense of courage in settling into the place rather than something that is based on idleness or passivity. It gives you more of a sense of direction together. What Unitarian Universalism does well at its best is it creates a sort of expansiveness. Often when less seems possible and when the world around you seems especially small, that is when we Unitarian Universalists have been willing to believe that more is always possible. That we are called to think bigger than what the world around us is saying we must do. How will that be a part of your conversation about your connections in social justice? How will that be a part of your sense of how big the tent is for this congregation as you think about the next era of your lives together? So I invite you to ponder those questions and then join me on Sunday, April 11th at 2 o'clock on Zoom to talk with each other about some of your thoughts about social justice and about who you want to be as a congregation, what you want to look like in the coming years. Most of all, I invite there to be a spirit of possibility to that conversation. A bit of dreaming and hoping for what may be true for you and for this community and the world. Richard Rohr reminds us, all I know is that there is a deep okayness to life, despite all the contradictions. Whatever your personal calling or your delivery system for the world, it must proceed from a foundational yes to life. Your necessary no to injustice and all forms of unlove will actually become even clearer and more urgent in the silence. But now your work has a chance of being pure healing instead of impure anger and agenda. You can feel the difference in people who are working for causes. So many work for social justice have been undone by people who do all the fighting from their small and angry selves. What is a deeper sense of purpose asking of you? What is love asking of you? What is your future asking of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota in Lakewood Ranch? I invite you to think about that and be in conversation with each other in the coming weeks. May that conversation lead us on. And now, I invite you to join us in our closing hymn, hymn number 114, Forward Through the Ages.
As we bring our worship to a close here, let us go forth thinking of these words by Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. Go now in peace.